We're going to talk about findings now, and a finding is anything that an auditor finds. So one of the possible findings is inconformance, which is better known as the smiley face, which means that there's a requirement and you're meeting a requirement and you're good. There's some other possible findings. First kind is opportunity for improvement, and that is an area of possible improvement that the auditor, because of his or her vast experience, can make suggestions. The obligation to you to do anything about an opportunity for improvement is zero. Next kind is called an observation. Observation is a potential nonconformity, and it depends on what the conditions are. The auditor might give you more time to solve a problem. The auditor might leave a message to the future that this is an area of concern. The most frequent cause of this is lack of clarity of the work instruction, and also sometimes the auditors will use that to avoid an argument. My number 2 rule on this is don't get into an argument with an ISO auditor. And then there are nonconformities, minor nonconformance and a major nonconformance. Minor is somebody didn't sign off on their paperwork, somebody didn't do what they're supposed to do on time. Could be any of a dozen things that doesn't affect the integrity of the product, but is not in conformance with what your process or procedures are. Major nonconformance, there are several ways to get those, and they're more important. The most important thing to remember about the major nonconformance is that you're likely to see another visit from your friendly auditor if you get one of those. What that could be is multiple breakdowns in the same process, multiple breakdowns of the same type throughout the place, a minor nonconformance that happens in one audit that shows up again in the second audit. The rules for handling these nonconformities is determined by the registrar, including the timing and how to document it and everything else. So these things vary by the registrar. You'll have to check into that, but the auditor will tell you when that happens. Documentation of the nonconformance is done by the auditor in a very specific way. They're supposed to cite the clause of the standard for the area of nonconformity, then state the manner in which the condition is not in conformance, and then state the evidence or other background information. Here's an example. The auditor identifies who raised the nonconformity. In these big audits, there are audit teams, and it's important to identify which auditor made the determination. Secondly, there's a severity, minor, major, observation, or opportunity for improvement. The requirement derived from the clause in the standard is next. And then there's a statement of nonconformity. In this case, there was a plan to do something, and the audited organization didn't do the plan. Then, in some detail, there's a specific procedure that required something, the filling out of an inspection sheet, and somebody didn't do it as planned. I have another video about stuff runs downhill for more information about how I feel about checklists in general. Checklists are easy to forget. At the time of the audit, the auditor is supposed to confirm that you, the client, understands the nonconformity, including where it happened. In some organizations, in huge buildings, it's easy to forget where something is found. From that, the client should be able to figure out how to submit the action plan. The action plan is a way to address the issue. The registrar has a set of rules as to the timing of this. The client's expected to come up with a root cause. There's no specific methodology for this except for there's guidance by ANAB as to the best way to do this. The action plan is submitted to the auditor, who then either accepts it or rejects it. You're then expected to implement the plan. Reoccurrence of the nonconformity indicates one of two things: lack of commitment or ineffective corrective actions, and if that happens, it's problematic. The finding is usually checked in the following audit and upgraded to major if not addressed effectively. Here is a side issue, which is that auditors dislike a vacuum. If your means of conformity is not clear, very often an auditor will invent a requirement for you. This is called Auditor Overreach. This is a bad practice because it taints the audit. Some other auditor may come in behind him or her and have a different idea. So your plans for conformity, that is to say your processes and procedures, should be as clear as possible as to what needs to get done and what form the objective evidence takes. The organization shall appears in the standard 91 times. The organization shall determine appears 19 times. The auditor shall determine appears 0 times. So the better you know the standard and the more clear your plan is, the easier it'll be to push back on auditor overreach. There's one more thing to talk about, which is the Auditor Hammer. It's the auditor's job to make a recommendation for certification or registration. The registrar is the approval authority. The auditor can't give you anything nor take it away. But if you don't properly address your findings, the auditor may recommend termination or suspension of the certificate. This is the Auditor Hammer. The auditor will have to present evidence of this or state that there's no objective evidence that you fixed a problem. Anything the auditor says can be appealed, however. The registrar has some rules as to how to do this, but to make a long story short, that's the lone mechanism that the auditor has to make you do something, and even at that is a long process.